Hi, welcome to our parent-teacher conference. I am so excited today to talk about Sam and all the progress he's making and how good of a reader he is. I just want to start out by talking a little bit about how Sam is in class, and then I'll get into talking about kind of his reading, where he's at, what I've noticed based on like the assessments that we've done. I'll explain a little bit about the assessments, and then I want to talk about maybe some areas of need that he might have and how we can help him in the classroom as well as at home, and also his strengths, how we can help him in the classroom and at home, and kind of what we've been doing to work on that. But yeah, so I'll just get right into it. And then sorry if I'm looking at my notes. I just have some notes that I wrote down about Sam so that I can tell you. But first off, I just want to say I love having him in my class. He's such a good kid. He is always super helpful, super kind to all the other kids around him. They all get along so easily with him because he's just so easygoing. He's also very good at staying on task. Like, I noticed that, even if other kids are distracted, he is usually on task most of the time. And then he always, like, there's a little boy in the class that has special needs and he always wants to help him out, so that's awesome. As far as his reading goes, he's an excellent reader, and he's currently on the level where he needs to be, but I think that very soon we're going to do testing in December coming up, so I think that when it gets to that testing point, I think that he'll be above level, which is really awesome, especially for this grade, because first grade is kind of, it's right when they're starting to learn. Like, some of them get it, but a lot of them aren't at that point yet, so he's doing really good for where he needs to be. He's also very confident in his reading, which is really good. When I gave him one test, it's called the Burke interview, and basically in that interview, it just kind of asks, like, how do you learn how to read, or like, who taught you how to read, why do you want to read, how do you feel about reading, and so I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But he emphasized, that he learned how to read from his mom, so that's awesome that you're helping him out at home. And he says that you read aloud to him from the Friend magazine, I think. So that's really cool that you guys are already doing the read alouds at home, because that's such a big thing for kids, and especially just having that at home already. I think that set him up to be a really good reader. He also is doing really good at reading. Oh, he says that he's doing really good at reading sight words, which he is. He's doing awesome at the sight words. But yeah, so that's just kind of like a brief overview of how he's doing as a reader. And yeah. Okay, so next I'm going to talk a bit about the assessments. The assessments, I'm not going to give hard data on, just because it's not like super necessary. It's not going to be super valuable to you. But I'll try to explain kind of what the data means, why we do the test, and then going from there, after I kind of explain the overview of what the tests are and what they're trying to test, then I want to talk about his strengths, his needs that I see, and how we can better help him in the classroom and at school, or in the classroom and also at home. So, just talking about the tests, the first one that I talked a little bit about doing with Sam was the Burke reading interview. Basically, that's just to see how he feels about reading overall, how he learned to read, who he thinks is a good reader, and that's just kind of get like a basis of like, where does this student think they're at, and then where I think it's a good basis, to see, okay, this is how they feel about how their reading is, and then once you do the other test, you can kind of compare, like, okay, this is actually how their reading is, this is how it compares, because, sometimes students are like, oh, I'm such a good reader, and then maybe they don't get it at all. But as far as Sam goes, he's like, yeah, he said he was at like a 4 out of 5, I think, for reading, and then when he started reading, I was like, oh yeah, like, he's definitely at the point where he needs to be. A couple other tests were the blending test. So that's basically where they just have different letters broken up into chunks. And for this test and the next test, the segmenting test, I said the words to him and then he would put it together. And so so these tests are testing phonological awareness. So it's really about listening and hearing the sounds and then being able to either break them apart or put them together. So for the blending test, that's the part where you're putting it together. And so he, I would give him the chunks of the word, and he was able to get that. And I'll talk about kind of his scores a little bit later on. And then the next test, which goes along with the blending, is the segmenting test. And basically in that test, we give them the whole word, and then we have them break it up into the littler parts. And again, he did really good about that one, or he did really good on that test. And so I'll talk about that a little bit later on too. The next test that we did was the high frequency word reading test. So for that test, I think I cut out little cards, and there was about 9 cards in each set. There was 4 sets, and we just did it all in one day for that test. But yeah, I gave him the cards, and basically it's just, look at this card and read me the card. And he was very good at that. I'll talk about that score later on, but he did very well on that test. So that's a really good sign. Another one was the PSI spelling test, which is essentially like, he couldn't see the words, but I said, this is the word, tell me how you spell it. He would tell me, and then I wrote down based on what he told me. And we'll talk about that. The next test, so that was obviously trying to test his spelling capabilities. The extra test, I did a running record. And I'll explain a little bit about that. So basically, I give him a passage. The passages I gave him were about 60 words each, and I gave him 3 different passages. For the running record, I listen to him. I have the same passage, and I write down. I say, okay, he got this word, or whatever. And so so I just listened to him. And that's what the running record is. And I marked, if he got the word wrong or right, and like if he got it wrong, just kind of saying like, this is what the word sounded like that he said. And then going along with that was also a retelling test. So actually, okay, so I did that for my extra test, and then the other test, we did the running record and then the retelling. And basically the retelling is just saying, hey Sam, like, can you tell me what you read at the beginning and the middle of the end of the story? And with that test, when he starts out talking, we talk about, what was I going to say? When he starts out talking, of course, I want him to do it on his own. And then if he needs prompting, and that's when I would offer prompting. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to try to get through all of this. But for the list for his strengths, I want to talk about his strengths and emphasize his strengths. One thing that I just noticed right off the bat that Sam was so good at, especially in our running record, Sam was so good at decoding words, which I think is a really good skill to have at the age and the level that he's at, because basically he would read it, and most of the time, or a lot of times, he would mess up the word, but he would correct himself immediately after, sound out the word again, and then be able to say it, which was really awesome. And he did super good on all of his running record tests. He got very high scores, so I'm not worried about that at all. That's an awesome strength to have. As far as sight words, he also did super good on the high frequency words, which the high frequency words are basically just the sight words. They're the common words that he's going to see a lot, and they're the foundations of what he's going to need to be reading. And he scored really highly on that also. So that was one of his strengths, is to know the sight words. And then lastly, with the phonological awareness, he did really good at the blending and segmenting. So that was awesome. And then just a few little things, recommendations for at home and what we're doing at school. And then I'll move on to the weaknesses, or his needs, I guess. So at home for decoding, I would say try to just do little activities if you can. I link a website in these notes that I'll give you. But I link a website and I just say, like, try to do activities with chunking to help break down bigger words into smaller words. I think that's where he needs to go from this point, is, building bigger words, because he already knows the basis of the smaller words. And then as far as class goes, we'll have a lot of worksheets where he can practice blending smaller words into bigger ones. So kind of just going along with that and working to build up to bigger words. As far as sight words go, He, at home, he has his little fly swatter activity that we go out at the community night, which you guys were at, which was awesome. So he can do that activity where it has the sight words, you know, and then he's reading the little book that he has, and when he sees a sight word, he hits it with the little fly swatter that he got. That'll be super fun and engaging for him. And then at school, we use the sight words a lot in our read aloud. So whenever we're reading aloud, you know, I'll say, okay, this is a sight word, you know, remind the kids what it means. And so that will just help his brain, it will help cement it into his brain. And then as far as phonological awareness goes, at home, to practice the phonological awareness, I just recommended, you know, I just want to do like simple stuff at home because of course, you know, you want to make it fun, you want to make it simple. So that can be as simple as just singing songs and reading rhymes together and then having Sam point out where he's seeing the rhyming words. That'll be helpful. And then at school, we practice this every day in the classrooms by writing and sounding out our, you know, our segmenting, blending, and then our substituting phonemes in the morning. Yeah. So, and then I'll talk a little bit about his needs. Sorry, I'm trying to go very fast here to get through all of this. But his needs, he does need to get a little bit better at comprehension. He was asking me, you know, this passage is too easy, I need something harder. And he was comprehending pretty well, like the easier passage. And then I noticed that when we did the test for the harder passage, it was harder for him to recall. And it was actually interesting because he could remember better the stuff from the beginning, but not so much the stuff in the middle or the end. And so something at home that I can recommend for that is just whenever you do your read alouds, which is awesome that you guys already do them, whenever you do read alouds, just as much as possible, try to be like, okay, Sam, like, what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, what happened in the end, and can you tell me, you know, these details, can you tell me about the characters? And just having him practice that will get it more cemented into his head. And of course, trying to go along with reading that's at his level too, and I think we may have pushed it a little bit during that test. But yeah, I just really emphasizing those points of, you know, getting the key details down so that he's used to that. And then as far as, and at school, we're also going to work on retelling pages where they can say, okay, these are the key details, this is the main events, these are the characters. So that'll be good to have him doing that both at school and at home, if he practices that at home, because I think that'll help him just to really get that down. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about was he's doing, you know, awesome overall. Just one other thing was his spelling. He's doing really good on the basic words, but I want to challenge him and push him because he wasn't able to spell a lot of the more challenging words. So at school, how we're going to work on that is we're just going to do word activities where I cut out a few letters and I say, okay, like blend these together to make words. And I think that'll help him to just see how words are spelled out and practice his spelling. That'll really help him with that. And then as far as at home goes, I talked about maybe giving you guys a sheet. I'm thinking about maybe incorporating like little spelling quizzes each week so that kids can have something to practice at home. But again, I know that's hard to do at home, so I also have a little website that just has spelling games because I think that games are really engaging for kids and it helps them to learn when they have something to like go along with it, if that makes sense, if it's more interactive. So I have a website here linked as well, but if you want, I can also give you the handout of a list of spelling vocab. So yeah, those are just a couple recommendations for his needs. But yeah, I only have another minute or so left, but I just want to say thank you again for coming, and Sam has been wonderful. He's such a delight to have in my class, and he is such a good kid overall, so I'm super grateful that he's in my class. And we, keep in contact. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Don't hesitate to ask. I'm always, willing to help. But he's doing great. He honestly have nothing to worry about. Just keep working on those read alouds at home and the goals that we talked about. And yeah, we'll see what happens next time. Thank you.